Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Gene from Design Theory. I am joined here today with another interview with our content writer, our exclusive content writer, Yvonne Barber. Yvonne, thanks for coming on.
Hey, hello everybody.
Awesome. Me and Yvonne have been having a couple of conversations over the past couple days, if not past couple weeks, about content. We always go back and forth on it. Really discussing content in terms of our clients that we currently have and that we've, sites that we've launched. And we always go back and talk about things that we've learned on every project. So I thought it'd be a good idea to take that conversation that we've been having and put it on video so that way you guys can kind of partake in that and also get your feedback on those points that we come across and also just to kind of educate you guys on things that we do on our side of things that you don't really get a chance to see. And I just want to say a little bit about me. Now, I hate doing content. When I first got into web design, not something that I like to do. I would do it because I didn't know any better until I started to develop a little bit more and started to realize and understand that someone who does content is someone who does content. They have an idea of what it is to go and research keywords, research demographics, research the industry, research products, and then
Hmm.
research your competition, and then take all of that and come up with good copy that should be on every page of your website. And the good thing about Yvonne is that she takes that to a whole other level, and it's not just for your website. She's actually would even convert that over into marketing materials for print media
Right.
that you can use, that our clients actually wind up using for their own businesses. So, which is a great advantage that we have, having you on the team, Yvonne. So that's just awesome.
Oh, thank you, Jean. Thank you very
Much
much.
appreciated. Yeah, it's great. It's great hearing the feedback that we get, and so I wanted to take that and kind of really jump right into this here, and
Okay.
thinking about and really talking about how understanding how content across the board is really important to a website.
Hmm.
How do you convince a potential client that that may have content in mind, but that
Hmm.
it's worth it for them to place stock into having content created by you professionally? Like, what do you say to them to get them to convince them to go into that?
Right. Well, first off, everyone knows that content is king. You
Hmm.
see it on every blog, you hear about it via webinars and things like that.
Right,
Everybody's talking about how important and crucial content is.
right.
And obviously, for every website, you can have great images, you can have a sleek layout and design, but if the actual written content about your product or service is subpar, people are going to jump ship before they even get to the second page.
Mhm.
So the first thing I want customers to understand is exactly that. Your written content is just as important as to the imagery that you select for it, as well as the layout and design.
Mhm.
And they all really kind of work synergistically with one another. So when I'm writing content, I'm definitely looking at those other elements to make sure that the written content is a great platform in which to hold up the other things. So, for example, if you have the content of writing being a mannequin, the imagery and the layout and so forth are actually the apparel
Mhm.
that you put on top of it and layer on top of it. And so then at that point, it all works together and it works well.
Okay.
Secondly, is that each client experience and what they bring to the table in terms of content is different. Their
Hmm.
expectations and their needs are different.
I agree.
So, helping them to understand that. But what is standard across the board, no matter what the business, is the professionalism that needs to be conveyed through the writing. So, if they're an established business, they have great marketing materials, then sometimes less content development won't necessarily be needed.
Okay.
But if they're starting from scratch, they need to understand the process and the value of the necessary research and writing that's critical to the success of the website.
Okay.
And third, I would have to say that getting them to understand, if they don't already, that not everyone who owns a business can necessarily write well about their business.
Hmm.
For example, a client who might own a mechanic shop, for me, I don't know the first thing about fixing my own car. And that's why I take it to someone who does.
Right.
I would not attempt to rotate, line, and balance my own tires because I wouldn't know what the heck I was doing.
Right.
So the same applies to content writing.
Right.
That's what I do day in, day out. So they need to understand that it's their job to tell or show me what they do
Hmm.
and then use that to do what I do. And if they can assist me in any manner, then great. But if it's not advantageous to the project, they have to let me do what I do best.
Right. Right.
And then last, I would say it's also about helping the client to understand the customer experience strategies that are being put into play via the content writing. So getting them to understand how important it is to consider what will be the potential consumer's experience via their website, and does what's written there, what's reflected there, cause a potential consumer, the service recipient, to feel like I want to do business with them or I want to buy that product. If the website content doesn't do that, it's pointless, it's a waste of time, energy, and most of all, the client's money.
Right. Right. No, I agree. I agree with all of that. I think that's some really good points. And I think that, thankfully, for the last couple of projects that we've had, and actually, I want to say this kind of a shameless plug, but in the packages that we have for Design Theory in our top tier packages, we've actually incorporated 4 hours of content writing because we felt like it's so important. And just like you said, one of the greatest advantages of having you on the team to do that is that we're able to allow our clients to go ahead and continue to do what they already love to do. Whether that be producing products, servicing an industry, whatever that is, they're able to focus more on that, and we can do what we do best, which is developing great content, developing great graphics, logos, and developing a great user interface and a good website that actually almost works as like an extra employee for them that's working all the time. So it's not just an informational website where people just go there. It's a responsive website. It looks
it's an experience.
Yes, it's an experience. And so by having that, no, actually that kind of segues into my next question. Really was so how do you ensure the amount of time that you spend on sourcing and researching content for a client, that how do you make sure that the time that you spend is adequate? Like what do you do to make the client feel like the amount of time that you're going to spend on a project is worthwhile?
Right. Well, back in February, earlier this year, I wrote a blog entitled Write It Like You Live It, which talks about this very issue and what my process is for navigating those waters. Okay. Adequacy of time relative to a project is really dependent upon several factors that I kind of mentioned above, in terms of whether or not they're an established business and have great marketing materials to work off of. So a lot of times, if that's the case, I'll actually ask them to send me their media kit, ask them to send me their brochures, their letterhead, any informational pieces that they already have. And that gives me a great platform for understanding a little bit more about what they do, what type of business they are, what their marketing outreach really looks like. But then you also have small businesses that are just starting from scratch and they have nothing. So obviously,
how do you work with that,
Yeah, it can be a little bit challenging sometimes. A lot of it depends on the industry that the client is in. So I usually start by doing some general industry research, and then I go into some of their main competition. So say they are a steel manufacturing company out in the Midwest. I'm going to sit down and look at the demographics of that area, look at who their competitors are, and get an idea of the standpoint in which I want to write from, the important information that needs to be conveyed, how to not sound like just like their competitors so that they stand out.
Right.
And also, throughout that entire process, making sure that the client feels like, okay, this person has kind of done their due diligence, right? So it's kind of like a lawyer prepping for court. You wouldn't get up there before the judge without ever having read the case file. So it's that same kind of thing. There's legwork that is required on the back end before you can even begin the writing process. And also, if it's a field that I'm completely unfamiliar with, then more research might be required, especially if it's like of a technical nature. Like we found that when we did Falcon Engineered Systems, where it wasn't an area that I knew a lot about, security and alarm systems for high-rise buildings in New York City. Like it's not on my coffee table reading book. You know what I mean?
That was an interesting project.
Yeah, so I had to do, some industry-related research to really understand, so that I could write from the premise of even the owner. or of having some expertise in that particular area. In terms of time frame, anywhere from 1 hour to 4 hours. It really kind of just really depends on the complexity and the nature of their business.
Okay.
And then becoming intrigued and entrenched in the subject matter, and then writing from that position, as I said, of seeming expertise and authority. Um, and then going back to the client and setting reasonable time frames
Hmm.
for completion of that portion, and then setting realistic time frames for completion of the project as a whole.
Okay. Okay. Now, see, that's part of one of our theories that we have in terms of when we have a client, from the
Hmm.
time that we actually sign them and they are a client of Design Theory, we do our best to get totally involved in their business because
Yeah,
there's no better way to take what they already know the best of that we chances are we have no idea anything about. I mean, we may
right,
have an idea, but really nothing. Not to the
right,
not to the vision that they have for either their product or service or business to
right,
their market that we don't see. And so we
right.
do our best to try to get involved, with that client, and
Yeah,
almost to the point to where it's like as if we work there too, because
yep,
then we can take that business's, personality, their view or their tunnel view on how they were able to, affect their market and why their
yes,
products and services are so great, and take that and use that or break that out into, an online atmosphere to where it's successful. Because I mean, if someone came to us and said, well, they sold or they serviced an industry that we had no idea
yeah,
about, whether it be fire alarm systems and high rise, whatever that a case may be. If we don't know anything about it, the best chance for us to know about it would be first from them, and then from them we can do the research and we can make a really good website that speaks to that. Otherwise, if we just take some random searches and some
right.
competitor sites and just manipulate copy and throw that on a website, which I've seen a lot of people do,
Yes,
which is
they
sad
do.
because it really doesn't help you much. Google's pretty
Yeah,
good about seeing, sourcing out really good content, but it's not really going to help you. You really need to have unique content that's just on your site or that's just on your materials. Um,
right. Well, you have to cater to the client in that way because, you don't want them sitting there looking at the content that you've written for the website and say, well, this just looks just like Joe Schmo down the street, or where
right,
have I heard that before?
right,
I couldn't imagine that. I mean, how embarrassing would that
right,
be
right, right,
for us as a web design firm if
right.
somebody said, I went on a competitor site and I saw a whole same paragraph and all you did was tweak one word. I
Hmm.
mean, this goes back to the early days of like plagiarism when I was in college and students who would do that, and I never understood why they would risk that. If you're a writer, then this is what you do. And you can get inspiration from competitor sites or in the process of doing your research,
Hmm.
but you really do need to write from here to here
Right.
and not so much from here to the keyboard.
Right, right. I agree. I agree. Now, and speaking in thinking of writing, do you use any type of any kind of applications for time
Mhm.
tracking, so that way you can take that back and actually show the client a report of how much time it really did take you to first research to actually write, and produce this valuable content for their media or for their website.
Yeah, I actually do. And it's funny, before I really became a full-blown content writer for design theory, I did some research. And it was very interesting to me that a lot of people who write content as consultants, they use a different time tracking system than what I felt would set me apart from others in terms of making the client feel comfortable with the time that I am spending on the research and the writing portions. So for me, I happen to use Toggle, which
Okay.
offers incremental time tracking. So once people understand what's entailed in the actual cost and hourly rate for content writing,
Hmm.
you kind of have to smooth their eyebrows a little bit with how you bill because they start doing, kind of like this, like
Smooth the eyebrows. I love that.
really. So you got to kind of
I love that.
bring them down a little bit.
Yeah.
Because a lot of content writers bill hourly with the basis of how many minutes they actually are using of each hour.
Mhm.
So, for example, if such a content writer has research or written for 37 minutes, they bill for the whole hour.
Right.
I don't do that. I bill exactly for each second and each minute that I work, and that's it. So if I work 14 minutes on a particular research project, on that one facet, that's exactly what I bill for. No more, no less.
Hmm.
And I found that my clients really love that. I mean, you could literally sometimes see their shoulders relax and the tone of their voice change once they know that. And I think most of all, it builds trust. It
Hmm.
builds trust with the client and confidence in my abilities, as well as the fact that they understand right from the get go that I'm not trying to take advantage of you.
Hmm.
I want to write great content with you, but I'm only going to charge you for what I actually do.
Hmm.
And, you know, I'm not bashing anyone who does the alternative, but I think for our clients at Design Theory, I've always heard the fact that they appreciate that regardless of what the hourly rate is, because they know that, like I said, I'm not trying to take advantage of them in any way, shape, or form. And once you've established that trust and rapport with them in that manner,
Hmm.
you will get referrals and you will get residual work. And
See.
we've seen that with a couple of our clients, like Agape Church, for example, up here in Connecticut, where we did their website and they were so appreciative as to the level of professionalism that we offered, as well as the great content and the
See.
design layout of their website, that they said, you know, we want you to rebrand us across the board. So then it came to redoing their letterhead, their business cards, their welcome kit, and even a brochure for them.
Hmm.
So I think it's, you know, establishing that relationship of trust that starts early on for me as a content writer that pays off much greater in the end.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I have a follow-up question with that. Because we've kind of gone through there before, and I just want you to say it really on camera. But what happens at the end of well, actually, let me go back. Because our top two tier packages, website packages,
Mhm.
include 4 hours of content writing. What happens when you reach 4 hours and
Right.
maybe there's not enough content for the rest of the project, depending if it's, it could be 20 pages, could be 10, 5, whatever. But what happens at the end of the 4 hours and more content needs to be, derived? What do you do about that?
Right. Well, this is where exactly that building that trust, you know, is so crucial and key, because when I'm getting close to the 4 hour mark, I make sure I inform the team of consultants and the client that I'm working with that more time can be needed.
Hmm.
I also look at the project as a whole from the very beginning. So if we have a particular client that says, I want 15 pages on my website, and this is not an industry that we've tapped into before, then I know right off right from the beginning that, at 4 hours is just not going to be enough.
Right.
And we're very upfront and honest with our clients in terms of that.
Right.
So establishing that great rapport with them and that trust early on is critical for me to be able to go back after the fact and say, okay, you know what, we've hit the 3 hour mark and this is what I have. And majority of the time they're saying, oh, okay, this is great, and then I have to say to them, but we have 3 or 4 more pages left. So, I want you to understand that another hour is not going to get us those additional 3 or 4 pages.
Right.
Oh, and we're very fortunate that we've never had a situation where a client has felt like, oh, well, I thought you were going to have the whole project done within this time frame. It's about setting realistic expectations with them,
Hmm.
and then for them to feel confident in our abilities, where when we do go back to them and say that they're like, okay, no problem, go
Right.
ahead and do what you do,
Right. Right.
and just keep me in the loop. And I
Right.
think they're always appreciative of that.
Right.
And that's why honesty and rapport are so critical to the business relationship
Hmm.
and trust. And I think, actually, come to think of it, it's kind of funny. In this moment, I'm remembering a blog that I wrote just a couple months ago about building trust. It was they like me, they love me, they love me not, I
Hmm.
believe was the title of that one. And it talked about building client trust and how important that is for them to give you autonomy, not just to write, but also lay out and design, that you have their vision in mind, you have their best interests in mind,
Right.
you have the growth of their business in mind
Right.
as you're designing and writing and choosing imagery and all of those facets.
Right.
You want to grow their business. So in response to your question, setting realistic time frames and being very forthright with the clients, and No, I'm fortunate, I guess. I've never had a client push back and get upset with the fact that it might take a little bit more time because of the relationship that's already been established.
Right, right. And I think that the other key thing to talk about too there is that we actually show them, here's how much work we've done. And
Yes.
here's how much more
Yes.
we need to get done. It's going to
Right. Right.
take this amount of time. So it's not like we
Right.
say, okay, we're going to do content for you. And then all of a sudden they get this astronomical bill and they're like,
Right.
I don't understand. Wait a minute. The first thing they're going to be taken back from is like this huge number of time and this huge invoice for amount of
Right.
time that gets done. And before they even see the content. And I mean, the content could be fantastic, but if you shock someone like that, and that's just not just with content, it's with the project as a whole.
Right.
You give someone an invoice and it's like, oh, I thought you were going to fix my stove, and then you come back and it's like, well, I fixed your stove, replaced your piping, put in some new gas, and installed a solar heating panel. And it's like, well, wait a
Yeah.
minute. I mean, not that I didn't want a solar heating panel. I mean, it looks fantastic, but I just wanted to get my stove fixed, and I
Right.
didn't anticipate seeing this huge invoice here to get this stuff done. And
Right.
before you could even question whether or not the work was done to par, the first thing you're going to do is question how much it costs. And so I think that having that rapport, like you said, with the client is fantastic. I think it's worthwhile. But also when we do get to that point where it's like, okay, we're reaching our limit here. Before we
Mhm.
hit that, here's what we need to get done. Here's how much it's going to cost you, and here's what we're going to do. It's not like we're going to say, oh, we need 4 hours, and don't ask me what for. We need 4 more hours because we're going to do this, that, and the third. We've already researched this. We've got it ready to go for the most part, but we still need to go back and derive some more for this reason, because this
Right.
page needs this for this attribute to talk about this more in depth, or whatever the case may be. We have to. Every
Right.
case is obviously different, but it's great
Right.
to be able to say, for your case, this is
Right.
exactly what we're going to do. So it's not going to be a surprising factor when they say, well, I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know what you have done. Here's what we've done. Here's what we're
Right.
going to do. And, obviously you can do it on your own, but this is why we do what we do best, because this is what we
Right.
do. Again,
Right.
focus on your bottom line. Let us focus on what we do. And then they're able to come back to us, and they've done it. They've come back and say, well, you know what? Can we change this down, move this paragraph
Mhm.
around, add these
Yeah.
words, or speak to this,
Optimize
talk
their.
more about this thing, and that's
Yeah.
cool, no problem. But at least it's easier to do that than to say, I need you to fill these pages out. Send them back to me. That's what I need.
We've been
Let
there.
me know when you have that done. We'll get back to your project at that point. So
Right. Right.
it
Well, that's
happens though.
it's true. It's true that, well, and that's why I like Toggle so much. And I'm such, as a content writer, you have to pay attention to detail always. It's always in the details.
Mhm.
So for me, when I'm actually going into Toggle, I'm articulating very clearly the details of what I'm doing.
Nice.
So when we send the report for the billing as we're going along, they're able to actually see, okay, she spent 1 hour, 46 minutes, and 15 seconds doing this. Oh, and then she spent 12 minutes doing this. I go in, I don't just put, these kind of very vague headings on spending 3 hours. If I'm the client and I put myself in their position, if I'm the client, I'm getting a bill and it says 3 hours content optimization. Well, what did you actually optimize for
Right.
the 3 hours?
Right.
So I like them to understand that, I changed some imagery, I tweaked it, I resized. When it comes to content, I went in and I wordsmithed something that you already had, but I also had to do some research in terms of this, that, and the other. And oh, by the way, I did some competitive research as well,
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
clients' websites, and all those different little facets.
Mhm.
And even though it can be, a little OCD sometimes,
Yeah.
at the same point, if I'm the client and I'm putting myself in their shoes, if I'm paying X amount of dollars for you to provide content for me, I want to see exactly what's going into that, not just in the finished product, but as you're going along.
Right.
And that goes a long way with clients, especially if you have to go back to them with your hat in your, hand, so to speak, and say, I'm really, really sorry, but we need a little bit more time.
Exactly.
If they've seen not just what you've produced over the time frame that you spent already, but understand fully what's gone into that, then once again, it goes back to that trust. And they're glad to say, you know what, just keep doing what you're doing. I'm so happy with what you've done so far, and I trust you to carry it through. And you're not taking advantage of me, so you know what, go for it.
Right.
And I think that that has always helped us. That has never hurt us
Hmm.
at all. I haven't seen one instance where someone's been annoyed with
Right.
how we detail our billing.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
awesome. I think that's awesome. Well,
yeah,
Yvonne, I appreciate you coming on and actually sharing the conversations that we've been having. Like I said, we've been talking about this between me, you, and the team.
yeah.
So it's really great to actually take this away from behind the scene of what our clients and our public may not be able to see or hear about, and actually put it
Right,
out there so that way they understand this is how we think about things. This is what we're
right.
doing. When we're working on your project, we're thinking about you and thinking about your business. And so, now and I think it's great to share that. And so I hope
Yeah,
that, I hope a lot of people, get encouraged by this and really understand a little bit more about what we do.
right.
So,
Absolutely. Well, it's always my pleasure as a part of the team to come forward and say, what design theory is all about.
right,
Not just in terms of what we do, but how we think,
right,
how we feel, what our process is, and to let people out there know that our clients are really important to us, not just on a one project basis,
right,
but we have a relationship with them. And that's, I think, so important to the success of any business,
right.
but we've actually seen them pay off through design theory and our relationship.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm glad to put it out there too, so people
Absolutely.
can know. Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity to do that.
As always, I appreciate you spending the time with me and doing these things. All right.
No problem.
Till next time.
Yes.
See you
Goodbye.
later.